Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the CV axle on a 2010 Nissan Altima. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're like me and have the stock rims on your Nissan Altima, there's a couple of ways to get started on this project. If you have an air gun to break off this center nut that we're going to need to do on the center of the CV axle, that'll work just fine. You can honestly jack it up and get the tire off and all that. If you don't, like me, what I am going to have to do is jack up the car, take the tire off, pop this piece off, and then put the tire back on. The reason being that this center bolt is on there super tight and I need some leverage in order to be able to get it off. And so once it's all up in the air, just like if you've tried to take tires off without loosening these lug nuts before you jack it up, it's the same thing. It's just going to spin in the air. So I did that, my stock one, on the driver's side. It just looks like this. Basically, it's got this center ring in here, and you just take some needle nose pliers and pop it off. Pops off real easy, and then I push this through so that I have access to that nut in there. That is a 32 millimeter nut, by the way, so you're going to need a giant socket for that, as well as you need to remove the cotter pin while you're in there. So alternatively, what you could do is you could stick a bar of some kind, a crowbar or something, in between the studs to give yourself leverage while it's jacked up with the tire off. I don't particularly like that. I feel like that might put some really weird stress on those studs, but it is an option as well. I should point out the reason that I'm replacing these, I'm replacing both of them, is that the boots on both of them are torn and throwing grease everywhere. I'll be able to show it later on. It's not like an emergency thing, has to be replaced immediately. It is something that needs to be fixed once those boots are torn, because you're not keeping all of that grease and everything on those components in the CV axle, as well as dirt and grime and dust can get in there and cause premature wear on your CV axle. So if your boot is torn, you need to at least replace the boot. There are options for doing that. It's not that much more expensive to put a CV axle, just replace the whole axle, which I'll include links on the axles that I used. So that's why I'm replacing both of them. So let's get everything set up so that we can get that center bolt off. Alright, so I got this nut all the way off. If you're rusted really bad, you could leave the nut partially on there, although in the end it wouldn't really matter since you're replacing this, to hammer it, but you can do that later. So next we're going to take these two bolts off here and here, 21 millimeters on both sides here and here. You'll need to loosen them. This whole apparatus will fall forward, so it's nice to leave one pin in there. We also need to, if you take some pliers and pull this out so you can move the brake line out of the way to get these bolts off, and then these ABS lines here, they just pop off. So go ahead and remove those lines and then remove those two bolts so that we can get this axle out. You can see right there, there's my tear right at the front here with grease thrown everywhere. So let's go ahead and do that next. So it's going to be easiest to remove this bit of plastic here. Pops off super easy. Just take a flathead to these little plastic pieces here, and they just pop off super easy. Gives you way more room because I'm planning to pull it out this direction here. So with that loose, there are two 16 millimeter bolts. See, there's a little bracket there on the top and the bottom there, 16 millimeter, that need to come off, and that bracket will come off. So I'm going to remove those and I'm going to pop this through. I'm likely going to have to lightly tap on this. My car is a desert car and relatively rust free. There's a little bit here, but in general you can see mine just isn't very rusted in comparison to what yours might look like. However, if yours is really rusted, you're probably really going to have to bang on this to get it through. So go ahead and pop this through so that you can finagle it out this way. So I should clarify that plate was actually 13 millimeter bolts there, and it popped right off. So I popped this through. So now I'm going to take a pry bar, put it in between here and this bracket here, and I'm going to pop it out of the transmission back there, because this is all one long pipe here. So make sure that you put an oil pan back there, because I did have a decent amount of oil coming out on the driver's side. So make sure you have one under there, otherwise you're going to get oil all over the ground. So go ahead and do that next. So interestingly, on the new axle, or on the passenger side CV axle, it doesn't have that little clip like you have on the passenger side. You can check my other video to see what I'm talking about. So I actually didn't have to hammer this out at all. It just popped right out once I had that little bracket off. It pulled right out, super easy. So you might still have to hammer it. Again, if you're a real rust area, it might be stuck on there. You might have to hammer it. So just a heads up, that might be what you're working with here. So from here, I'm just going to put it back into place here, and then I'll show you. I don't know that it's going to need to be hammered back in. The same concept, because it doesn't have that pin, I don't think you need to get it past anything. Basically, you're just going to pop it in and then start putting that bracket back on. So go ahead and do that next. Alright, so this went back in super easy for me. I got those bolts put on that bracket back in. Went in super easy and popped through here easy. It's a little loose, but once we put that bolt on, it'll lock it into place. So go ahead and put these two bolts back on, torque them down to 105 foot-pounds. Go ahead and put your brake bracket back in place, and these ABS lines, lock them back into place. And then we're going to go ahead and put this castle nut on next, or I guess it's not technically a castle nut on this CV axle, but on most of them it is. So go ahead and torque those two bolts down next and put these lines back into place. All right, so you're going to go ahead and bolt this down to 129 foot-pounds. And so what I did, I put my tire back on. I still had that off. I cranked it down so I had the leverage. And then I took the tire back off so I can put the cotter pin on. And then I'm going to put the tire back on with this piece. I don't know if I showed it before, but I removed that ring. You can put it back on, and then it actually pops back in. Super easy. It'll stay in. So obviously you put the tire back on, crank it on. So the main things here afterwards are just watching the car, making sure it's not making any rattling sounds, clunking, anything like that. Again, you are going to need to check your oil and your transmission fluid. Check both of those and make sure that they're at the proper levels. You may need to refill them. So anyways, that is how you replace the CV axle on the passenger side on a 2010 Nissan Altima. So hopefully this was helpful, and thanks for watching.